I was home alone one night for a reason I don't remember. All I remember is my entire family was gone. I was 15 or 16 years old. I was a big gamer at the time. I was obsessed with StarCraft, and admittedly, I'd sometimes spend a weekend night or two playing StarCraft or some other PC game. This was right before COVID lockdown started. I was playing StarCraft on my computer in my bedroom on the first floor. That's when the doorbell rang, twice. I hurried to the door, not wanting to be away from the game for too long in fear of losing. I got to the front door and said, "Who is it?" as I always would if I was alone. A soft and weak voice on the other side said something that I couldn't hear. It sounded like a woman. I opened the door, with the storm door still separating me and this older woman standing on the other side, with a big smile on her face. She had her hands behind her back. I said through the door, "Can I help you?" She said she needed to use a phone, and asked if she could come inside. Ever since I was a little kid, I was always taught not to let a stranger into the house, ever. That included women. I felt so awkward, though, I didn't know how to turn her away. I redirected her to the library a few blocks down, because they'd surely have a phone. Deep down, I knew the library was closed at this point, but I was just trying to get the stranger who was trying to get into my house to leave. She was still smiling, but what she said next did not match her smile. She said, "That's very rude to turn away an old lady asking for help." I replied the only way I could think to, and that was that my parents don't allow strangers into the house. It's a house rule. I slowly started closing the door as I was saying sorry, and she just stood there, not moving but still smiling at me. And though her smile never changed, it suddenly felt much more menacing. I was walking back to my room when the doorbell rang again. There was no way in hell I was opening the door again. That woman radiated weird vibes from the start. Maybe something was wrong with her, maybe she wasn't all there. These were things I had no way of knowing, and maybe that was selfish of me to send her on her way. But I just wasn't opening the door for anyone when I was home alone. I went back to my game. Not too long after I sat back down, I heard something tapping on the window. It was a clinking type sound from something metal. The window was directly in front of my desk. I had the blind pulled down so I couldn't see what was making the noise, but I already had an idea. My room was the only room with a light on in the house. The horrible thought that it was the old woman from just before, and that she walked over to my window, terrified me. I turned off the sound on my computer. At this point, I didn't care about my game anymore. The clinking sound on the window persisted. I basically said, "F this," and up and left to a different room in the house. I sat in the darkness of the living room for a bit, when the doorbell rang again. This woman was harassing me now. I tried to convince myself she wasn't a threat, just some crazy old woman who's probably clueless as to where she is. When she rang the doorbell a second and third time, I decided to go open the door and ask her if there's someone I could call for her. But when I opened the door, there was now a man on the other side. He looked to be about 10 years younger than her. He said through the storm door, "Have you seen my mother?" I replied saying yes, she came to my door just before. He then apologized to me and said she has dementia and got out of the house. I suddenly felt bad, but he asked me if he could come in for a minute, and again I felt awkward. Why did he need to come inside? I said the same thing that I told to the woman who we claimed to be his mother. I said we could just talk through this door. I then said that I think she went into my backyard because I heard something at my window. I told him he could go around back and check. He thanked me and walked down the walkway, and I thought he went into the backyard. But when I went to the back and looked out the back window expecting to see him searching around, I saw nobody. Not him or his mom. This was all too weird for me. I went to bed on the earlier side that night, just falling asleep with the TV on in the background, until I heard the clinking sound on the window again. Something metal was tapping on the glass. I remembered the concerned man, and I decided to try and help. I went to the window, lifted the blind up with my hand, and I saw that woman outside my window, with that same creepy smile. She was tapping a kitchen knife on my window. I closed the blind and crawled back into my bed. This didn't feel like it was actually happening. A suspiciously short amount of time later, the doorbell rang like 4 times. The clinking on the window stopped by this point. This was all too suspicious. It felt like some kind of robbery attempt. I ignored the doorbell. I stayed in my bed. I was gonna wait this out. I didn't have a cell phone at this time. I wasn't the most social guy growing up. I also didn't want to call the police for some reason. I waited this all out until it finally stopped. The next morning, I told my dad what happened when I called him. He told me I was smart not to open the door. Everyone agreed that everything about it sounded like an attempted robbery. Is there a chance that maybe that woman really did have dementia and that the man was really her concerned son? Maybe, but it all seemed too coordinated. Why did he want to come into the house too? How did he even know she came to my house specifically? Why didn't he ever go into the backyard to look for her when I gave him permission to do so? Too many unanswered questions that lead me to believe I avoided something terrible happening if I opened that door. So as I mentioned at the start of the video, a week ago as I'm recording this, something happened to me personally that inspired me to revisit this theme. So my friend Cody asked me to watch his dog Theo for the night. Theo's a little pomsky and he barks a lot. So when he started barking like crazy at something going on outside, I didn't pay any attention to it besides telling him to be quiet a few times. But when he went to the back door and kept barking, I figured he wanted to go outside. So I was going to the back door to open it, but as I got close to the door, I realized someone was trying to open the door from the outside. And then I saw through the screen of the door there was another guy looking right back at me. This was in the backyard, which was already alarming enough, and he wasn't someone I recognized to be a family member of Cody's. So I asked him who he is, and he responded asking me if I'd seen Melissa. Melissa is Cody's younger sister who's in her 20s. Meanwhile, this guy looked like he was in his mid-50s and homeless. So I told him he needs to leave. There's no Melissa who lives here. And he said, "You sure?" So I said, "Yeah, you need to leave. There's cameras all over the property." He left right after that. Getting him to leave was easy, but when Cody asked his sister who that guy could have been, she said she had no idea. The guy looked like he was 55, drunk and filthy. Not exactly someone Cody's 20-something-year-old sister would be associating with. The fact that he went to the back door and tried letting himself in was actually pretty terrifying because you could only imagine what he was trying to do to Melissa. And it's why so many of these stories could be avoided by just keeping your doors locked.